Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to another episode of our /Entitled People, where, let's be real, you mostly hear stories about entitled Karens, but sometimes there's gonna be stories about people who think the world revolves around them. Guys, before we get into today's stories, take a look at this video. A woman flips her lid in a parking lot because this guy apparently is too close to her car.
But I can't open my car. My daughter has to get in. He won't move his car. My daughter has to get in. Move it. You parked it too close.
You
heard me. When you open that door,
does she do this a lot? Car. Is she okay?
No, she's fine. The car is parked too close to her car.
Do you see your tire? Let's get serious. Let's get serious. You see the line that separates these? Now come over here. Come over here. Come on. This is just for fun. This is just for fun. No, come here. Look. Just for fun. Look. And then look at this.
Look, your tire is right on that white
You need to stay within the lines.
So do you. So do you.
But look, I'm perfectly between the lines. Look, I'm actually hugging this side a little too much.
I'll take a picture.
Yeah.
You.
En español, por favor.
Don't call women crazy. You're crazy. Look, you little you fucking old driving a car like that, asshole. You're not happy, man. You're an old fart. You're too old to be driving a car like that. It's too big for you.
I'm in disbelief.
Pecker. Yeah, I bet you are. Look and you drive like it. You drive like it, you little tiny pecker.
This is
so you
original.
need that. That is your isn't it? You proud of your old but it's your car, it ain't you. Yeah, I can't get it up. Viagra, my ass.
This is entitlement at its finest. I parked crooked, so you gotta move your vehicle so my daughter can get in. Any normal person would have realized that they parked like that, taken responsibility, and just backed the car out. Why cause a huge scene? Come on. My friends, in this episode, you're gonna hear some super entitled stories. The first, OP encounters a super demanding woman at his work. The second story, a Karen harasses OP in her own home. And we'll finish up with a crazy story where a Karen steals OP's walking cane. Oh my goodness, you guys need to sit back, relax, and get ready to shake your heads. I hope you stay for the stories today and do hit that subscribe button for future stories, my friends. Let's dive in. Long ago, way back in the before time, I worked for one of those bulk warehouse club stores. My trade was simple. I was a wrangler of the Silver Buffalo, and dutifully retrieved the old ghetto strollers I did. The job in itself wasn't the worst I've ever had. I got plenty of exercise, got to be outside, and generally did not have to interact with the members, for the most part. The thing about this job is that the company I worked for had a reputation for being cheap. Thusly, more often than not, I was on my own out in the parking lot. Big whoop, you might say. You gathered carts? You should see how hard my job is. Yeah, well, shut up. This is my story. And I digress. The reason that being alone sucked is that this store didn't just have one kind of cart. They didn't even have two kinds of carts. You had your classic garden variety cart, the kiddie cart with a plastic facade to make it resemble a car, the electric scooters, and finally, the bulky, hard-to-control flatbeds. On top of that, whenever someone needed help loading their haul into their minivans, I was the guy they called. You know, because greeters, cashiers, and managers were all busy. As you might expect, one man cannot be in multiple places at once, and as a result, on some of our busier days, it became incredibly difficult to keep enough carts in the vestibule. Our story begins on one of these days. So there I was, chugging along like a good worker drone, struggling to keep up with the sheer volume of people coming in to buy cheap bulk goods. Sure enough, I get a call on the radio. The manager says, "OP, we need you to help some customers load their purchases." I replied, I'd love to, but I'm barely able to keep up out here as is. Just do it, OP. You can afford to stop gathering carts for 2 minutes. I didn't want to push my luck, so I complied. After spending 20 minutes loading people's purchases, because when one person needs it, suddenly they all need it, I came back to find my vestibule a near ghost town, save for a single line of carts that was half gone, and there was Karen. Now, I won't waste time describing the specimen. She was the prototype. There she stood, menacing, tapping her foot with such speed that it can make any metal drummer green with envy. You could collect the contempt in her gaze in a jar. Karen says, "Where are the big flat ones?" I blanked for a moment and said, "I'm sorry?" Karen responds, "Ugh, Mexicans." For the record, I'm very much white. I've never even been to Mexico. Karen continues and says, "Where are the flat ones?" "Oh, you mean the flatbeds? I'm sorry, I was just helping some other members load their merchandise and haven't had the chance." "Oh my god, I don't care about your excuse. You have one job. A trained monkey could do it." I told her, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll just grab one from the parking lot for you." And Karen says, "You'd better." So I go back out to the lot and find a whole line of flatbeds sticking out of a corral blocking several parking spaces. I push them all into the vestibule where she waits, huffing about how I'm wasting her valuable time. I separate one from the rest and bring it to her, and I said, "I'm terribly sorry about the wait, ma'am." And she leers at me with utter malice and said, "Huh, unbelievable." And with that, she dismisses herself into the store, where she'll become someone else's problem. I shake my head and return to doing what I'm paid to do. About 15 minutes later, I'm returning a line of carts when I see her pushing her flatbed to her Miata and jawing about how she hates stupid people on her cell phone, most likely referring to me. And you know what she had bought? What she had insisted on having a flatbed for? A cake. This wasn't even like a big cake. It was one of those little circular ones. Anyways, I witness as she continues to yammer on about how I nearly ruined her precious baby's birthday party when the most glorious thing happened. Still clutching her phone with those scoop claws of hers, she attempts to pick up the cake with one hand and the plastic topper pops off, and she spills the cake all over her undoubtedly expensive designer outfit. Seething with white-hot rage, she locks eyes with me and says, "You, get me another cake, now." I said, "I'm terribly sorry, ma'am. I've got one job, and these carts will not gather themselves." I walked away, a giant grin plastered on my face as her shrieks faded into the distance behind me. I've had my fair share of customers, I mean, members, but Karen really takes the cake. I guess you could also say that Karen got her just desserts that day. I can't believe she used a whole flatbed cart for a cake. Oh, silly Karen. I live on the ground floor apartment, in the middle of my little town, with a small courtyard at the back. There's a lovely set of glass sliding doors that open from the living room into said courtyard, and on the other side of the courtyard fence, there's a public footpath, with a public car park behind it. It's lunchtime here at the moment, so there's a person walking past every 5 minutes or so. So, I was sitting on my sofa, watching TV and eating my lunch, when I spotted one of those little black millipedes on the carpet. We get a lot of them at this time of year, so I used an empty box to scoop it up and chuck it over the fence, so that it hopefully won't come back into the apartment. No big deal, right? There was this Karen walking along the footpath, a fair way down from our fence, and she yelled something like, "I saw what you just did." I didn't think she was barking at me since I hadn't done anything wrong or unusual, so I just went back inside. She then appeared at our back gate, shouting at me for throwing rubbish over the fence and littering. I told her I had thrown a millipede over the fence that I'd found on the carpet. She accused me of lying and said she's seen me throw a box. I opened the fly screen and held up the empty box and said, "You mean this one?" She froze and stammered a bit before saying, "Well, obviously you threw something else then." I then asked, "Then where is it?" And this woman actually started scouring the flower bed between the footpath and the car park for the imaginary rubbish that she was adamant I'd thrown. I guess she found nothing, because she came back to the fence and barked, "If I ever catch you littering again, Missy, you'll be dealing with the police." So I said, "Sure, I'd love to tell them about you harassing a disabled woman in her own home. We'll see how that goes for you." And she stormed off. I get dealing with Karens in the wild, but in my own home, I wish I'd thought to snap a photo of her just in case. Hindsight is 20/20. So, a bit of backstory. I'm a 28-year-old woman who recently went fully blind. When I was a teenager, I volunteered with my local youth group to help rebuild Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina. And while down there, I picked up a fungal parasite called histoplasmosis that over a decade made its way to my eyes and slowly caused blindness. I've been totally blind for about a year now, so I'm pretty new to it. When I first went blind, I barely left the house and was afraid to go in public. I felt like everyone was staring at me, and in all honesty, I barely knew what I was doing. The transition had been difficult, and I didn't have any support group to teach me. So, one day, my husband asked if I could take an Uber down to the bank and deposit a rent check, and I reluctantly agreed. While out, he messages again, reminding me that we're out of a few crucial groceries. There was a Walmart grocery across the street from the bank, so I figure everything in life is an experience and I'll have to learn how to shop alone eventually, so why not? Everything was fine at first, and I was only grabbing a few things, so I didn't need a cart. I was using my cane and what little echolocation skills I had at the time to get around, but was still bumping into things, as we blind tend to do sometimes. My cane suddenly hit something a bit softer, and I figured I might have whacked someone's leg and apologized. And this is where Karen and her kid comes in. I said, "Shoot, I'm sorry." Karen screams, "Hey, you just hit my son." I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't see him there." She begins yelling and says, "How could you not see him? He's clearly right here." Now, I'm fully blind, but I don't wear sunglasses. Mostly because I can't afford a good UV blocking pair, but also, I'm not ever looking for pity or to play the part of a generic blind person. I just want to be seen as a normal person, but I do understand her confusion, so I try to calmly explain and said, "Ma'am, I'm blind. I can't see anything. That's why I have to use this cane so I can get around without." She cuts me off and says, "If you're blind, why aren't you wearing big sunglasses?" Now, as a blind person, I tend to get a lot of stupid questions, but I can understand a lot of them are just people who don't know any better, so I happily try to answer as many as I can. And I said, "Well, those are really expensive, around $200 for a good pair, and I really don't need any inside." And Karen says, "You're not blind. You're faking it." So, here's where my blood starts to boil. I can't think of any reason someone would want to pretend to be blind. It's an actual hell, and nothing pisses me off more than when someone calls me a liar when I'm not. I already hate the fact that I can't see anymore, and this just made me feel so much worse. Just as I'm about to respond, I feel a tug, and before I blink, I realize that her little kid has snatched my cane from my hands. For those of you who don't understand, that's like if you're shopping and suddenly the power goes out and you can't see a single light. Without my cane, I can barely move at all without crashing into anything. My voice gets shaky as I begin to panic and said, "Please, give that back. I really do need it." And Karen says, No you don't. You're a liar. Just give it to my son so he can play pretend too." I hear her shuffling away and my expensive cane cracking into metal displays as they leave. I start crying and waving my arms in front of me to grab onto something, anything, and end up crashing and falling into a center aisle display, making a loud scene. Without fail, I somewhat curl into a ball and cry. I'm alone in public, in the dark, and I had no idea what to do. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder, and a man's voice asked me if I'm okay, and to stay right here. I do, but begin to at least sit up and listen. This man must have been tall and built like a tank, because his footsteps sounded like a giant, and I felt the suction of wind when he took off. Maybe about 30 or 40 feet away, I hear this loud bellowing, like an angry lion, and then a loud crash. Then before I know it, the man's back and helping me to my feet. He takes my hand and puts my cane into my palm and helps me pick up the items I dropped when I fell. I'm wiping tears from my cheeks and say, "Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't know how to handle that." He told me not to worry about it and that some people are monsters. The guy had restored my faith in humanity and even helped me finish my shopping and helped me out of the store. As we're leaving, I can hear the familiar screeching of Karen, something about a man grabbing the cane and pulling hard, flinging her little kid into a shopping cart. I don't know if she was exaggerating or not, but it would explain the crash that I heard. It's easy to feel alone in a world without light, but even though the sheer terror of being stripped of my cane, at least I know now that there's some people willing to stand up for me when I need it. Oh my goodness, how ignorant do you have to be to utter the words, "If you're blind, why aren't you wearing big sunglasses?" Well, gee, Karen, you don't see a lot of deaf people wearing earmuffs, do you? My friends, and that brings us to another end of r/Entitled People. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you missed the last episode of r/Entitled People, a Karen ignores a danger poison sign and gets really, really sick, and then she blames OP, of course. Check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.